Hey guys, the name of the video, I'm going to get right to it, was I'll just stop drinking so much whiskey and drink more beer. Well, if you buy that, I'll also save some property down there I got in the swamp in Florida. That's really about how it is, or it's like I'll just use withdrawal method and not use protection when I have sex. Ain't nobody, they lost their rabbit-ass mind. Ain't nobody gonna stop. Ain't nobody gonna stop in the middle of that. Just like ain't nobody gonna stop in the middle of their addiction. But it's real interesting that we use a lot of defense mechanisms to help support and maintain our addiction throughout this entire process. Now, the process can be a lot of things. It can be breaking up with a family, losing a job, losing a girlfriend, losing trust, losing friends, losing money. I mean, you can just go on and on, many fingers as you got, the problems will occur along this progression of your addiction. But what's really interesting about it is that an addict will, or an alcoholic addict, I'm just using those terms interchangeably here, will go to any length to defend what they're doing. An example of that might be rationalizing. Well, I don't drink as much as Joe Blow down the street. In fact, might go hang with Joe Blow just to prove that, because we do that. We, if you're a social alcoholic, you'll do that. We get around folks that are worse than we are, so we can say, well, see, I ain't that bad. Justifying. Well, if you had my problems, you drink too. I remember talking to a guy in England that back in my drinking days, and I said something to the effect that well, people who don't drink don't understand what's going on in the world. He said, yes, I agree, or here, whatever. I was too drunk to remember. I barely remember the conversation. We justify what we do. We rationalize it. We minimize it. I'm not doing so much. I'm not doing that. Look over here. People doing worse. And we blame others. If it wasn't for my wife or my hard-ass boss or all these financial problems, blah, 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 blah. Well, the list goes on and on. So those things are things that we do to protect our addiction. We can look around. It's kind of like somebody dropped a tactical bomb. That's the term going around now with all this stuff in Ukraine and Russia. And everything will be blowing up around us, but we'll find some reason, some way to justify that, well, it ain't as bad as it looks, which in that case, I hope you can. But that's really the length the addicts go to protect their addiction. Their defense mechanisms are deeply entrenched, pretty much to the core, and it takes a lot to get through to someone that's gotten into that mindset and that is trying to nurture their addiction. Because all the things that you need to break the addiction, being honest, being open, being willing, truthful, those are things that just, they're not cohesive and they don't support addiction. So those things are things just out the window the minute you get on into it. So the process is lengthy for some. For others, it's quicker. I talked a lot about the progression of the disease, and you can take it and look at a graph, and you can Google it on YouTube. I'm not going to sit here and hold a graph. But the progression goes through this phase where it starts socially, and it starts where it interferes a little bit with home. And you get to a party and you're the last one to leave. Bartender wants to throw you out. You can't find your car keys, and you get a DUI when you do find them because you blacked out. And you look up and the cops standing over you. Go into a bar with a pocket full of money and you come out shit-faced and broke. Just any number of things we do. I don't want to belittle and belabor that whole process because most of the population that is dealing with this, intrinsically I think they know that. They know that what they're doing is killing them. And at some point, they either make a decision, am I going to live or am I going to die? And living versus dying ain't really a big equation unless you can find something worth living for. And most of the addicts have lost and damaged relationships with family, loved ones, wives, spouses, husbands. And some of them seem irreparable. And sometimes they are irreparable. But family counseling helps a great deal in that process. Having family members come in and get involved in the treatment so they can understand what's going on with the person that's their loved one. Because when you get to using drugs and alcohol, you just get crazy and run over dog. Ain't no other way to put it. All rational thinking, everything that you're not the same person. It just changes the physiology changes something in your brain, especially when it gets to that point of no return. And when I mean no return, I mean you cross over the line there. You're no longer a social drinker, you're no longer a social tutor or banger or whatever you're doing at the time. And the destructiveness that goes along with that is just like a tsunami. It tears up family, it tears up relationships, it tears up trust, it tears up everything that we had to live for. So in order to weigh those two things out, living versus dying, it'd be good to know that there was something still worth living for. And that's why people that go through treatment have no idea how lucky they are, or maybe they do, to have one family member that'll show up for treatment and come and be there to support them after they've bankrupted them and whatever else they've done to them, after they've lied and just basically broken their heart and broken their trust, and nothing left there but a shell of that person. So you do have to find something that you're going to do this cost-benefit analysis within yourself and decide, well, I want to live, I want to die. So I'm going to go ahead and just add a part 2 to this because I did the part 1 of my story. After I talked about the 1 year and getting clean and the divorce, that's really where part 2 comes in. I've maintained an outside residence for probably about a year while the separation was going on. And in that, somewhere along that time, I decided again to come into the treatment center and live there. So now this is my second stint from 2012. This was 2018, I believe it was. And I didn't come in because I had relapsed at the time. I came in because, well, I had no reason to stay out in the world. I was supporting 2 households. There were some financial issues that led me to that decision. And again, we got a new major. I've been really lucky about running into majors that were helpful. So at the time, I had let my license go the year I retired, which was 2017 in April. And I went back in 2018, I believe it was January when I went there, or in October, November, maybe November. And the then director there at the program had let her license go for whatever reason, busy running the treatment center or whatever. And the clinical director at that point didn't have a license either because of something to do with her CEUs and her educational background, where she couldn't get certified through the state. Well, they needed somebody to work there, and I needed a place to stay, so I reinstated my license, and actually the Salvation Army there paid for my license, and my agreement was I would work there at least a year to help them till someone else got their certification back. And that went on pretty good there for a good long while. During that period, I did do group and individual counseling, and specifically on these topics we're talking about. And I also did some trauma counseling because addicts tend to have accidents, and they tend to cause accidents, and they create accidents. And not just the accidents or the behavior that derives from their addiction, but deep-seated trauma goes way back to the origins of the family, and it really depends on the age of onset of the trauma as to how far and how deeply ingrained it is, and what kind of counseling is needed to help the person to find somewhere they can cope. So that whole process was good for me. I was able to go back to the major this time, and when I went back, I told them I needed a place to stay because of financial reasons, and well, the divorce at that point was ongoing. And I told them, I said, well, I haven't drank, but if you need me to get in the program, I'll be glad to. Of course, I really didn't want to, and I said that because there's a stigma with programs, and I don't have anything else to call it but a stigma or a bad judgment, basically. People coming in needed preventative maintenance. If you're not to the point yet that you are gone, a lot of times you're not going to be qualified to come into a program. And I didn't come in through the regular channels. I came in through the major, and I came in with the director of programs at that time, and another young man who was working on his LSW at the time. He was the house, what do they call him, house supervisor, house man, over security and over the center, basically. And they helped me to get into the program where I'd have a place to live and work. So for about a year, went downstairs and went right on to the office. And never was late too much, but I mean, they give you a wake-up call 5:30, 6 o'clock. So that's enough rambling about that year. So the reason I'm just talking about that is some people that see this, know me, will know that what I said in the other video might sound contrary to what actually occurred, but once you piece it together in my scattered mind, it comes together, and you can see the continuity in it. So I managed to stay there and working that program for another year and a half. Actually, to the point, it was going on 2 years, and at that time the program, the powers that be in Atlanta, Georgia, decided, well, the resident employees need to move out. Well, I went ahead and took it on my own to get into an apartment, and I got out and I lived out in the community there for another year before I left to come back over here. And what is the relevance of all that? Well, recovery is the basis of everything, because without that, I wouldn't have ever gotten to the point that I could have sense enough to think, to plan ahead, to prepare, and do the things that I need to do, and to get where I am today. Now, a lot of folks don't know this that never traveled to Asia, but during the time of my travels, the Philippine government had a buku of regulations. It was a nightmare. People were getting turned away and all boarded on a plane because of a test, a COVID test, or a lack of a COVID test, or a QR code off of an app, a government app that you'd have to download within so many hours before you get on the plane. So it was quite a lot just to get through that process. In fact, 2 hours in Atlanta in line to confirm the paperwork, about another 2 hours in South Korea to do the paperwork again to verify that it was correct. And then, well, it didn't take that long in Manila, but it took about an hour. So that process was very, very taxing, especially for an older guy and who's scatterbrained. And had I not had the mental acuity to do that, I'd be in a mess. I'd be out of a lot of money. Plane tickets over here, and I'm rambling on to my stuff, but plane tickets over here at that time were anywhere from $2,500 on up. The COVID thing has eased some, and the flights had started again, and so the airlines just up with the tickets. So recovery is relevant to everything. It's relevant to life. I mean, without some reason to live and something to live for, I can't argue that there's a point not staying in your addiction. Now that's going to be controversial, I'm sure, but some people need something to live for, and especially an addict. So whatever it is that you can find to hold on to that is meaningful to you in your life, whether it's a relationship, whether it's walking on the beach, or whether it's going out sitting under a tree listening to the squirrels and the birds, or fishing on, whatever. There's got to be something in your life that you want to hold on to that gives you the motivation to hang with this and suffer through it, because when you go through the stopping and withdrawal process and staying stopped, it's like a freight train wreck. And you've got to get through the wreckage in order to get out on the other side. So the teacher said one time, tell them what you're going to tell them, tell them what you told them, and tell them again. Well, again, the idea of minimizing your use or changing your use of substance, whether it's alcohol or drugs, whatever it is, gambling, whatever it is, the idea of substituting that behavior for another that you seem less dangerous is, or you seem to think is less harmful, is about as useless as tits on a boar hog. That'd be about like arguing, well, a 45 to my head. I think I'm just going to take it away, and I put a 22 up there now. It doesn't matter what you do, and it's going to be the same outcome. There is no minimizing and no negotiating with your addiction. We're not Henry Kissinger. We're not the great arbitrator or negotiator. Addiction is going to be the master unless you master it. That's just the bottom line. It's going to consume your entire life, your entire thinking process, and your ever waking moment. So, unfortunately, there's only one way that the elevator goes. It either goes up and it comes down. So, there is no standing still with it. And that's what recovery is. If you're not moving up, trying to do something to sustain yourself and get away from the behaviors that you were involved in, well, you're going to be back there again. And put another way, Mama used to say, if you run with dogs, you're going to get fleas. So please take to heart the idea of harm reduction. It certainly is a valid and a viable model for certain dependencies. That's a very controversial and argumentative point with a lot of folks, especially total abstinence from the AA perspective. But when you're early in your addiction, swapping beer for whiskey, or what, a 8-ball instead of an ounce cocaine, or half a gram of meth instead of a whole 8-ball, it just doesn't work that way. Not in this life.